Good morning, TCG.
Good morning.
I bring you greetings. And maybe I should start with a bit of obedience first because the earlier moderator handed over the microphone to me to say what I was thankful for the last week. So maybe I should start from there because I'm moved to speak. So I want to give thanks to God for, she said three things. One is I received some divine favor in terms of some contracts, some commercial contracts that I've been pursuing. Actually, let me start a little earlier than that. So I'm part of the missions board for the main church, and we meet every other Friday for about an hour and a half. And so 2 Fridays ago, we were in the main sanctuary, in the boardroom upstairs having a meeting before turning point prayers at 6 p.m. And so I came down for turning point prayers immediately after that. And Pastor Prince spoke particularly powerfully that evening and asked us to be brave and to ask for, many, to ask in proportion to our faith. So I asked for certain things in proportion to my faith. And throughout this week, I've actually seen manifestations of that. So like I said, commercial favor commercially with some contracts that I've pursued. That's one. Two, members of my family were traveling a lot last week, up and down across large distances. I thank God for journey mercies, for all their movement. I want to thank God for victory, even health-wise. I'm doing, I try and exercise regularly. You might not know just by looking at me, but I do. And, yes. And I on Friday, went above and beyond what I usually do. So I'm pretty proud of myself. I may not be able to keep up with you guys, but I'm doing well for my age. Praise God. Thank you so much. So let's get down to business straight away, and let's look into our scripture for today and what the message is from the heavenly places. God's abundance. We're speaking about God's abundance, and our scripture reading was from Ephesians 3:20. There are many stories that we can study in scripture that show us, first of all, how God is sufficient, and thereafter how He can provide for us abundantly. How God is sufficient, and thereafter how God can provide for us abundantly. Okay? And I would like to start with a story that revolves around Christ Himself in the Gospel of John, John chapter 6, from verses 9 to 13. Book of John, chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. And it's a story that most of us should know. It's a story about 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And I read from verse 9. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and with 2 small fish. But how far will they go amongst so many? Let me pause there and give context. Christ has been delivering a message to a large gathering, to a very large gathering. We don't know how many people there are there yet, but we'll soon find out. But there's a large gathering, and because man shall not live by the word alone, but also by bread, Christ Himself said, hey, these people need to do what? They need to eat. They need to eat. For this gospel to find a good landing, let them eat. And then maybe we will have a few more people answering the altar call. And He spoke to His disciples and He said, what shall we do? So they went. They looked around and they said, The only thing we have is 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So they recognized what they had, but they said, hey, Nikidogo, this is it's not enough. See, Tosha. And Jesus said, have the people sit down. I'm back to reading my scripture, verse 10. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. 5,000 men. I don't know if we did a census now of the ratio of men to women. Are there more men or women in this place?
More men, women.
Which is it, men or women?
Women.
Who has the facts? Who did the census last? Who did our statistics last week? Anybody?
Not them.
Can you tell me? Tell me last week, Nadel. Women were more. Okay. And that usually is the case in Solution Center. Men, what's going on? Youth men, they're online. You're the ones inviting. You're standing outside. I've got 2 people soldiers out there. Whether it's Queen Esther's generation, even in Father's Blessing TFP, there are more women. Anyway, so I'm making emphasis on this because it says 5,000 men. I don't know how many women were there. I don't know. They may have been less, they may have been the same, but if they were like Solution Center, it means there were more than 5,000 women if they were like Solution Center. But we don't know the answer to that. Verse 11. Jesus then took the loaves. He gave thanks and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with fish. Again, I stop there. This scripture is so loaded, you can't just read it maramoja, no. Verse by verse. He started with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He gave thanks. Then he gave each person as much as they wanted. Teacher Sam, if I gave you bread now and I asked, how much you needed for yourself, if nobody was looking, maybe you pay, you can have 2 loaves, you by yourself, in the privacy of your home. And Jess is laughing, we don't know how many fish she eats. But the scripture is precise. It didn't say he gave to some, he gave to them 2 slices. No, he didn't say he gave them 3. He said he gave to each as much as they wanted. For me already the miracle is done. We shall finish. You have 5 loaves, you have 2 fish, each as much as they wanted. Not as much as he could give them. The limitation is not on the source. The limitation was on who? The recipient. If I stop there, that already is a miracle. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be added. But it does not stop there. Go back to my scripture. I'm on verse 12. And I quote, when they all had enough to eat. Who are these people? We know that there are 5,000 men. We don't know how many women, but if it's like Solution Center, there must have been at least maybe 10,000 women. Children, there's some toys sitting there in the back. Can you see them? They're having their own private service in the back over there. There were probably some children playing like this, dancing around where their parents were, because both mom and dad were there. When they, not some of them, all of them, had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Now you've cool out. Everyone has cool out. And there are leftovers. I don't know the word for leftover in Kiswahili. Somebody help me? Mabaki.
Yes.
Mabaki. That makes sense. Mabaki. All right. So they picked up the mabaki. And they filled 12 baskets. Kyoto.
Yes.
12 baskets. with the pieces left over from 5 loaves of bread. How big were those loaves of bread? How big were those loaves of bread? So I thought about this. And I don't think the issue was the loaves of bread. Those loaves of bread were kawaida. They were kawaida. They were the same ones you can buy in Tuskys or in Naivas. I'm a roadside, anywhere. They were kawaida. The issue was whose hands were they in? That was the only difference. It was the same loaf of bread. It was the same samaki you can get anywhere else. The question was, in whose hands were they? In whose hands were they? So I tried to decompose the components of this story to see now, if we try to recreate that here, now, today, how would we do it? Who is the young boy? Is it Amos Shaw? Can we give him a little peso to run down the road and go and buy bread and bread? Is that a yes or is that a no?
Yes.
What do we know about the boy? We don't know much. But as far as we know, number one, the boy gave what he had. So the boy had something, he didn't have nothing. He had something. He gave what? He gave what he had. Not wishful thinking, not a future promise. There was something with him, something in his hand. Took it and he handed it over to us. Whatever that might have been, he handed it over. Point number two, on that same issue, as far as we can tell, the boy gave all that he had. The boy gave all that he had. If I digress a little bit, from those 5,000 people, that's not 5,000. First there was a boy, and the boy is not a man. So we know that at least there were 5,001. At the very least, 5,001, because now there's a boy that has been introduced. And the boy cannot be called a man, can't he? Is it possible that there were other people there that had packed a lunch? Is it possible?
Yes.
Absolutely. It's very likely, in fact. If they came and they've heard of this, preacher, they've heard of who now? They've heard of Reinhard Bonke, or they've heard of Pastor Prince, or they've heard of Joshua Selman, whoever. People are going to go there because they've heard about him and they're excited and they have to go some distance. And maybe it's a full day crusade. If you don't pack your chakula, you will at least take a bit of money to buy something. But based on this story, I want to believe other people had something. Maybe they had more, maybe they had less, but they are not mentioned. Maybe someone in the congregation thought, hey, now this one that I have here, this little ugali that I have, I think it's enough for me, and I will keep quiet about it. They are not mentioned at all. The boy gave what he had. The boy gave all that he had. That was just the starting point. Now, Jesus took what the boy had. Everybody else was irrelevant. There were 5,001 people. One person gave all he had. It was enough. The 5,000 people, keep your person, keep your food. This one willing person is enough in this congregation to make a difference. Jesus took what was available. Before he broke it, he gave thanks. Before he broke it, he gave thanks. It takes discipline to do that. Sometimes, we try and be good parents, exemplary parents, but we're human beings. So sometimes I can be with my boys at home on the table,